Fatherhood still is the most difficult thing that I've done in life. After 12 years, some days I still feel like I don't have a clue. But it's getting easier. Or at least I'm learning to cope with the challenge that it brings along the way. I'm Brett Farrell, and this is Fatherhood. I've been talking to fathers to see how they handle this thing called fatherhood, because through sharing our stories, we all become stronger. This is a monthly podcast, so please subscribe, and each new episode will find its way to your favourite podcast player. Be encouraged by the stories and advice, and share it with your friends, because as we know from the Hugh Grant film About a Boy, no man is an island.
I've never been asked that question. You know, a lot of people see with the eyes instead of the heart.
In this episode, I talked to Brian Welch, also known as Head, one of the guitarists from nu metal band Korn. That's Korn with a K. Brian's a hard rocker who spent his 20s touring and partying, and most of the 90s and the years after fighting his own demons.
I was like the master at just being a secret, like nobody knows what I'm doing.
Brian and I recorded this episode when he was in Australia to promote his film, Loud Crazy Love. It's a story of becoming a father and growing up. It's the story of his second child, his daughter, Janae.
We felt like we were given a second chance because there was so much pain involved in the adoption, you know?
Brian soon found himself a single dad taking Janae on the road until she needed to start school. But leaving her at home had its own challenges.
Just start drinking.
His books and the movie go into detail about his life and his perseverance at bringing up his daughter as a single dad. From a distance, the tattoos and long dreadlocks look menacing, but I sat across from Brian to record this episode and I couldn't look away. He is truly captivating. The tattoos around the eyes have gold flecks in them, and I don't understand why people can't see past the exterior, because you don't have to go too far to see he's a soft-hearted guy.
All right, so one more dad joke.
Why does he carry an umbrella?
I don't know. Why does Snoop Dogg carry an umbrella?
For drizzle.
I'm Brett Farrell, and this is Brian Welch. You said in the movie you had to get off drugs before becoming a Christian, and you talked about being high during that church meeting where you came to Christ.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most misunderstood part of your faith journey?
Oh, you hit me with a difficult question right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
What's the most misunderstood?
How do people misunderstand you and your faith?
Probably about the, a lot of people see with the eyes instead of the heart.
Yeah.
And the heart inside of me is just for love and servant to others and deep intimacy. The number one prayer that I have that's personal to me is I want to really, 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 really know you, God. I want to know the lies that many believe, because I want to know the truth and I want to know the real you, not the religious you that man has built, possibly. I want to know the real you. And so I think people, when they see this outer package of, the dreadlocks, the tattoos and everything, they would, some people prejudge that maybe and see something else.
I get it. We all do this sometimes. I admit walking around my local shopping mall and, having opinions. It's a good reminder to be a little less judgmental, particularly as one day my daughter will have a boyfriend, and I probably should get to know him first. So what gave you the courage to tell this story on film?
It was after writing my books and just sharing all of the the personal things that I have been through, plus me and my daughter, and being a father, and just, mistakes and successes and everything. When I wrote my books, I saw how many people, like on your show, you'll hear people say, wow, you really helped me. Well, that happened like so much with my books. And so, what the logical next step I thought was possibly a documentary, because I had so much home footage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this stuff is good because it's so old, but so interesting, And so once I got some partners come alongside of me, it was a green light.
I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. Tell me about the first time you found out. So the moment you found out you were going to become a father for the first time, what's happening in your mind?
Well, it depends, because in my first book, I wrote about there was a baby that me and my girlfriend put up for adoption. And so the first time I was so young, probably 23, and I was just like, I was scared because I was a child myself. I felt like I could barely pay bills, and I lived in a house with like 5 other dudes, and so I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know. I was afraid for the baby. I'm like, well, how am I what can I do? Okay. And so what happened was we ended up finding, we adopted, put the baby up for open adoption. So when a few years later, when I had success in music and was more of a, I just had some things. I was grown up a little bit more, not too much, but a little bit. And then my girlfriend ended up, we didn't know we were going to stay together because she was 19 when she got pregnant.
Okay.
And so when she got pregnant that second time, we were just like, it was so magical. And we were we felt like we were given a second chance because there was so much pain involved in the adoption,
Yeah.
Even though it was best for her.
Yeah.
When that baby was born, we were like, oh my gosh, this thing is a miracle. What are we doing?
The whole story is, in some respects, it's you trying to decide what's best for her. And that adoption story, does it echo with Janae later in life when you're faced with awakening youth?
Oh, that's a good question. Does
it haunt you?
No, because there's, God is really in the healing business. And so there's a lot of things in my past that hurt at the time, but they don't hurt anymore. Okay. They're just there. And that's what happened. And he's taken the pain away from them.
I couldn't imagine the pain of giving up a child, let alone not being in a place where it didn't hurt anymore. That just seems too big a thing for God to heal. But he did it for Brian. And that's what faith is. Tell me about the day Janae was born. What was that like for you?
Ooh, wow. That was July 6th, 1998, I think around in the evening sometime.
Yeah.
And it was just so amazing. She was, when I heard her cry for the first time, I was in the room, and it was, what I know now, the presence of God, I felt that day.
Truly?
Yes. I felt the presence of God coming, just a magical, just that pure love and peace that is from another place,
Would you have characterized that as that back then? How would you have processed it on the day?
On the day, I was
because this was pre-Christ for you, wasn't it? Yeah.
And so on the day, I was just thinking that there was just this great love that came with having kids, and there is that. But I think God was trying to get my attention too, that just about the miracle of life and everything, And so I didn't connect it to the divine, I connected it to just
love.
Yeah, love. Yeah, that's very good.
You pretty quickly became a single dad. Circumstances were what they were. At some point, wouldn't it have been easier at that point to maybe give Janae up for adoption as well, given what was going on in your life?
Oh, that never crossed my mind.
Not even.
Never, because she was already with us for 2 or 3 years, and we were I was the dad. I was like, I wasn't going to make that decision again. Okay. No way.
Right.
And so, that could have happened though, because we were struggling with drugs, and it just, to me, that's not what happens. You just get it together and you be a parent. But
yeah, that was one of the things that came up in the movie. Your positive, intentional decision to focus on that. Was there a moment that switched the lights on for you there?
Just that I think my family, my parents raised us, and they weren't perfect by any means, but they were there.
Yeah.
And their marriage, stayed together, and there was never any really dramatic things that happened as far as like illegal things going on, or it was just some drinking, Yeah. But they were there. Yeah, they were always there, involved in our school and sports and everything, and just even though my dad was angry a lot of times and he had drinking issues, at least they were present,
Yeah.
So that never crossed my mind like to lose her or give her away.
Brian's reflection that in spite of his dad's imperfections, at least he was there hits home. Don't get me wrong, I want to be more than that, but maybe as dads, we need to give ourselves a break and accept that we're doing the best we can. And being there is sometimes enough. It's normal for dads to be away rather than moms to be away.
Yeah.
I think. I don't want to play the stereotype, but you're away for a lot. Other people, I guess, looked after Janae when you were on tour.
Yeah.
So how often did you actually get to see her?
Probably, we go on tour for like 6 weeks. So we didn't have any iPhones back then, so no FaceTime.
Yeah,
and so it would just be like, she'd jump on the phone. Hi, Daddy. I'm like, Hi, are you doing okay? How's school? I miss you so much. I can't, you can't see. And so it was really hard. But you just make the best of it. So I would see her after the 6 weeks I'd be home for a little bit.
After that phone call, do you then have to go out on stage and do your job?
Yeah. And just numb it with drinking and everything, and so.
Because I find those calls are hard enough. Like,
right.
Just I'm away for 3 days now. But just to have to go out and give yourself to a crowd of people waiting for you.
And then everybody comes to the concert and they're so excited to meet you, backstage people and everything. And if you're going through something, you can just have bodyguards keep everybody away, but there's always people around. And so it's like, if you want to have alone time, and sometimes there's not a lot of alone time to process things like that. So just start drinking.
I've never had thousands of people screaming out to me, wanting a piece of me when I have nothing to give. I actually don't know how I would have reacted. But I do know that all too often drinking can numb the pain. You mentioned earlier your dad did a good job. He's a drinking problem. But is there any advice that your dad ever gave you that you still hang on to today?
Just that he instilled in us. He was a great provider, and he worked hard, and he went after his goals as far as every business that he was involved in, he was successful. He's successful as a banker. He was in the military, Coast Guard. He is a vet. Then he started a Chevron truck stop where all the big trucks and gas stations, and there was a diner, and he was the owner of that. And so he just really, taught us about getting out there and working and putting in the work and everything. And so we didn't really communicate much about, it was just, a lot of it was just about how you doing, and da-da-da.
Yeah.
But we didn't get real deep. He was just, his dad was kind of hard to, they come from a different generation.
I'm actually the opposite. I want to sit with my son who's 9 and say, how was your day? What did you get up to? Tell me about that thing that's happening in your life. He's like, yeah, it's good. And I hope as he matures, he'll share a bit more, because I think maybe...
Like, how do you feel about that, though? What is that goodness? And what does it feel like? Yeah, that's cool. Keep bringing it out of him, and eventually he'll open up.
So the film touches on your anger, and it's a theme that comes up on fatherhood. How do you deal with anger now as opposed to back then?
Oh, my gosh. I just let it out back then. And now it's very minimum now, the anger. And I met a guy, I forget his name, but this guy goes around and speaks in America, maybe even around the world, but teaches on things like that. And he also encourages businesses and unity in the workplace. And he speaks to corporations and everything. And he says to replace thoughts. For instance, I told him just today, I'm just like, I got angry, started swearing and stuff about, I drop things all the time. I'm a klutz.
Yeah.
And he says, why don't you look for something you're thankful, instead of like saying the cuss word, you say, God, thank you, I have fingers,
That's beautiful.
Thank you because there's people that don't have fingers, there's people that don't, and you think about that. And so it displaced the anger. And I'm not perfect, but it seems to work, and it diffuses it.
Brian took intentional steps to get help with his anger. Ford Taylor is the guy he was talking about. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, sometimes it may even take a small country to help. But that's the key, getting help. There was one part in your book where you talked about when Janae was at Awakening Youth, and I can't remember if it was when she was at or when you saw her again after those first few months, that you noticed your anger, your uncontrollable rage had dropped away.
Yeah.
Was there any connection with Janae being Awakening Youth? Perhaps there was something about her being there and your anger dissipating?
I just think that, yeah, that's interesting. I've thought about that before. Maybe possibly the fact that I could finally have help with her and not try to do it myself because I was incapable of doing everything myself.
Yeah.
And there was someone else who had a gift for counseling and for helping people in families communicate their emotions and everything. And so I think that the pressure was just off of me, and finally I wasn't alone.
Wasn't alone.
Yeah.
I guess you're in a great position now where you can look back and you can see redemption, you can see restoration. But one dad said to me, he can also look back and see some scars. So what kind of damage does that anger have on kids? Because I worry about that for me and my kids.
Yeah.
What does it affect? How does it affect them?
You struggled with anger too.
Yeah.
The most dads, huh?
Yeah, every single one without fail.
You know what? Just communication with the children is so important. Yeah. I used to tell my daughter, I'm so sorry for the outburst like that, and will you forgive me? And when she was a teenager, she got to a point where she was so in rebellion and angry. She was like, you saying sorry doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do it like in a few days again. And so you don't mean it because you're going to do it. I go, what do you say to that? You're just like,
you're right.
No, because, well, yeah, she's right that I'm going to do it again. But the point is, I don't want to. And I have no control over that. You know what happens? They grow older and they see themselves do it because we all do it.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they look back and say, wow, you tried. And my daughter's at that point now where she's like, you did the best you could with your circumstances, and you're a great father. And so that's very healing to me to hear her say that, you know.
Partway through the book, and certainly partway through the film, you're thinking to yourself, I hope this works out for the poor guy.
Yeah.
And Janae.
Oh, I love that.
You're just cheering, you're on, man.
Yeah. Because you saw in the film, right? And that my heart is there.
Yeah.
It's just the damage. And it's just this, the ego or the false me or the angry me just, won't go away. But the heart is there.
If you haven't caught the movie yet, social media was Janae's way of staying in touch with her friends after Brian had moved them from Arizona to Nashville. Janae immersed herself in social media, and Brian wasn't happy with what she was posting. Now, I'm going to pivot, if it's okay, to social media, because in my house, that is the one thing that dominates my 12-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
I read and I saw your battle with it and her friends in Arizona. And what really, I think the battle with social media is real for all parents. But was there anything that you noticed with it and Janae's use of it that really triggered a response in you as a dad? Not as an angry response, but like, there's something really wrong here about this, because it's a bit beyond just talking with friends.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you watch out for on social?
Well, the crazy thing is my daughter's almost 21 now, so she's learned a lot, and we hope that everything's healthy now, and I trust her. But I think the things you look out for is the time spent.
Okay.
There has to be something that parents put a restriction as far as like when you get home from school or whatever. There has to be in a certain amount of time where they cannot go over that, because, if you're in agreement and everyone's in agreement that those are the rules, then it won't rule their life. But, well, my other friends, they get to be, but it's destroying too many kids. You can't take that chance. But I got to the point with my daughter where I was like, okay, you can only be on this amount of time. And she would just like throw the biggest fit. And I was a single dad. So I'm like, I would give up and let her win.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough, but there's got to be an agreement on the amount of time.
Social media, the other universal frustration for all fathers. After we finished recording and we were packing up, Brian asked me about my daughter and how she's going with social media. Admittedly, it's a tough challenge and a tightrope walk to balance, but he looked me straight in the eye and said, just monitor how much time she spends on it. If social media was as big as it was, the late 90s, the early 2000s, when Korn was really firing, would you have behaved differently?
Social media was...
Yeah, like, backstage groupies have now got cameras, and would that have affected your behavior, or wouldn't you have changed?
Oh, it would have been way worse.
Worse?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was the king of secrets, and you could be so secretive and with social media and everything. And I was like the master at just being a secret. Like nobody knows what I'm doing in secret. And so with groupies and everything, I would have been a serial, like just probably sex addict even more.
Truly?
With
what went on?
Yep. Because I've never been asked that question. And I know that in my crazy state with drugs and everything, I would have used social media to that lust advantage,
Okay. Well, that's certainly honest. I love Brian's willingness to be transparent. Despite his failings, he's not consumed with guilt or fear of failure, but love. I struggled to figure Brian's story out through watching the movie Loud, Crazy Love and reading his book with my eyes wide open. But it's clearer now, having spoken with him. His is a story of hope and redemption, two things that we as dads need to continuously cling on to. Do you have any dad jokes that you want to share? Are there any good ones?
Why can't a bike stand on its own?
Why can't a bike stand on its own?
Because it's too tired.
Oh, Brian,
Get it?
Welch.
2 tires?
Brian,
Oh my
Welch.
gosh. Can I do one more?
Yeah, go for it.
Why didn't the lifeguard save the hippie while he was drowning?
Why didn't the lifeguard save the hippie while he was drowning?
Because he was too far out, man.
That's actually borderline funny, that one. Thank you to the show's producer and editor, Loretta Farrell. To Nathan Brown at Christian Media and Arts Australia for arranging the interview, and Angela King from Movies Change People for taking the photos and brilliant video of Brian teaching me how to mosh and play guitar at the same time. Remember to subscribe and share this with your friends, and I'll see you next episode. I'm Brett Farrell, and this is Fatherhood.